An issue we've been talking about since the launch of the Quest 3 might actually be getting some fixes through software updates. The Quest 3 microphone was something at launch I told you was probably its worst feature. So as we mentioned before from doing the demos and testing out, the pass-through does look really good, but as we found, if things are a little further away, they look a lot better. And as you heard there, it's pretty rough. Meta's VP of VR, Mark Rabkin, actually talked about what they're going to do on Twitter and how they're going to make these better. He says in a software update they are going to make for better on-off muting, better audio quality by using the mic array differently, EQ, and better gain management, which I think is kind of funny. They're saying, including working with devs who are adding more gain than we expected. Because when I initially tested that, it was just in pass, it was in the home environment, it wasn't any game, any dev that was changing the mic. It just sounded crap. And you can see where it distorts a little bit when you get close to it. Mark Rabkin also went on to say that they're going to use some advanced noise canceling algorithms with the mic array to make plosives and fricatives sound a lot better. Plosives are a speech sound like the sounds that T, K, and P make. It's especially when you see people testing mic, they'll P, they'll make the P sound a lot because P tends to make things pop. And then fricatives are more like the F and Th sounds, so the F, the TH. So they're looking to improve all those to hopefully give a better overall mic. I hope this works because the microphone has been my biggest complaint on the Quest 3, and the fact that they might actually be able to fix it through software update is pretty neat, but we'll keep you posted if it actually works out. For those of you out there who like Quest 3 giveaways, there is a game company giving away 10 Quest 3s. The developer of the new game UNDERDOGS that just launched today is giving away 10 of them. Giveaway only runs about 2 weeks, and although it looks like a ton of entries saying 17,000 people can get multiple bonus entries, so the chances on this giveaway are actually pretty decent. This is to celebrate the launch of their new mech arena battle game UNDERDOGS, which just came out today. This game is rated mature 17 and up, and you can tell when you're in the game the adult language, the violence you're going into. It's a pretty wild game. And so far, even though it just launched, over 50 ratings, giving this thing a really positive rating of about 4.8 stars. 94% of those are 5-star ratings, and yet any 1-star ratings, no one's written anything about it. So all the written reviews are really positive, saying this is a fantastic mech brawler, fantastic, breathtaking, visceral mech fighting. People bringing up that they've been wanting a good mech fighting game in VR, and the only review I could find any lower is saying that it's cool, but they didn't really like the graphical style. It goes for more of a cel-shade graphical style, which actually looks really good on the Quest because it looks like the graphics are meant to look that way, and it doesn't look like it's striving for something better than it can actually pull off. I tried out the game some, and the interesting thing I found about it is a surprisingly intense workout. You are boxing, you're moving, and if you just let your body go turn whichever direction you want to instead of trying to face the camera like I was, you're really moving around a lot. If you've tried UNDERDOGS, let me know what you think so far and how much you've been playing it. Thanks to the developer of this for sponsoring this video, and make sure you go get entered in that. 10 Quest 3 is a pretty good chance. I'd love to see someone from our community win one of those. Link in the comments and the description. After many turbulent years of Meta trying to get back into the Chinese market, we had reported previously that it looked like they were working on a deal with Tencent to bring a Quest 3 Lite into China. Further reports now saying this is not going to go through. Meta was supposed to work with Tencent. If you haven't heard of Tencent, they're actually one of the biggest software companies in the world, especially in the Chinese market. And they're actually the company that's been selling and supporting the Nintendo Switch in the Chinese market. This would have been the same kind of structure where Meta would have produced a Quest 3 Lite, Tencent would have supported and sold it in China, and then Meta would hold on to most of the hardware money and Tencent would hold on to most of the software revenue. They would have also helped them in getting the Meta library translated over for the Chinese market, but new reports out of Chinese news outlets are saying that Meta has suspended this whole partnership due to unresolved details on how to handle the specifics. If it's true, this could be a good shot for ByteDance as they own Pico, although they've been backing off on Pico, it seems like pretty heavily as we've talked about in the other news pieces. What do you think? Does this mean that if Quest 3 Lite doesn't come to China, is that going to hold off on the possibility of a Quest 3 Lite here in the States? There's been a lot of talks about the rumors of the Quest 3 Lite and maybe seeing it come out here to replace the Quest 2, give something at that lower price point, but with the better chipset that would then enable developers to only be developing on one chipset. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've been living under a rock for the last few weeks, you probably haven't heard of a game called Palworld. This is a survival game, and although this is not directly affiliated with Pokemon in any way, people are saying it's basically a Pokemon with guns game. People describing it as the Pokemon game Nintendo should have made but didn't. And in its first week, it's already sold millions of copies and has more simultaneous players on Steam than any other game outside of the peak PUBG time. Well, if you've been enjoying it or you're curious to check it out, this is a game that's built on the Unreal Engine mod, and due to the new UEVR mod for PC, you could actually play this in VR. If you haven't heard of the UEVR mod, basically all Unreal Engine games can now pretty easily be brought over into VR, although of course they're not going to be perfect. These aren't games built for VR. If you want to get the controllers in, that's a whole nother story. But basically, you can already take this game, you go in with an avatar that doesn't have a head so that doesn't get in the way of your first person view, and you can play this through VR. It's pretty amazing to see that now with this new UE VR, we're able to play flat games without full-built VR mods this quickly, albeit versions that aren't nearly as good as something like if Team Beef had put it together or something. But I wonder how many of you out there are actually playing Palworld, whether flat, or if anyone's playing VR, I'd love to hear about their experience there. Has it pulled you away from VR? I personally haven't tried it at all, but I've been watching some streamers play it, and it definitely looks like a Pokemon game that someone else made that's a little less child-friendly. For years now, the game Demeo in VR has been known as the Dungeons and Dragons of virtual reality. This is a tabletop game with different heroes. You're crawling through dungeons together with your friends, trying to survive and beat the bosses. Well, now there's official news on an actual Dungeons and Dragons VR game. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast are partnering up with Resolution Games, the creator of Demeo, to make this Dungeons and Dragons VR game. Very exciting news for Demeo fans and for Dungeons and Dragons fans. Demeo's probably been one of my most played VR games of all time. It's actually won multiple VR Game of the Year and other VR awards from different news media outlets. And although this is early news and we don't get many more details for now, basically they are working together and making this happen. We'll keep you posted here on the story as it develops more, but I can't wait to see some trailers and what this is going to actually look like. Ghosts of Tabor, still in early access, has quickly become one of the biggest VR games in the world, and now it's official. It has reached $10 million in revenue, and it's making its way to the main Quest store. This launched just last March, and if you remember, we actually got to go out to Florida, Orlando, and go to the launch party of this game when it was first coming out. And now, less than a year later, this is actually coming out in the main Quest store on February 8th. If you don't know what Ghosts of Tabor is by now, if you know what Escape from Tarkov was on PC, it's basically that. This is an extraction, squad-based shooter where you go into raids, you're trying to get new and better equipment as you're exploring, take down other teams and steal their equipment, and then get out before you end up getting killed and you lose everything you had on you if you do. CEO Scott Albright was quoted as saying, "It's hard to believe that only 22 months after launching our studio, we've amassed such a massive and dedicated community. In the last month alone, we saw more than 120,000 players on active duty." Great news for the VR industry as a whole to be getting more games like this that have this kind of playability, because Ghosts of Tabor is something you can continually play with your friends, build up. It's not a game that you're going to pay $20 for and then be done with in a few hours like so many others. Speaking of, it is still $20 right now on App Lab or Steam VR, although the price is going to increase after the 31st, so very soon, up to $24.99. If you're interested in this game, you haven't gotten it, now might be the time to get it and then watch for that official launch over there really soon. Rec Room is a VR social game that's available on virtually every platform, it seems, except for PSVR 2. This game has been known as the great unifier of VR because when VR chat wasn't available on original PSVR, Rec Room was. It went to mobile, iOS, Android, flat PS5, but some really unfortunate news in a Reddit AMA. Rec Room CCO and co-founder Cameron Brown basically said that they can't justify bringing Rec Room to PSVR 2. It just wouldn't make economic sense. In their full response on Reddit, you can see they said, "No current plans to bring RR to PSVR 2. We've looked into it. It's a non-trivial port and we haven't found a way to make it make economic sense. In an ideal world, we would love to bring RR to PSVR 2, but we can't justify the cost based on the numbers. Sucks, I know, but that's the truth." Although I've been loving Resident Evil 4 on my PSVR 2 recently, it does seem like this is another potential nail in the coffin unless Sony really starts putting some real money into some sort of exclusives for the PSVR 2. When it costs $500 and you have to have a PS5 to play it, and people see a Quest 3 at $500, it's a tough sell. If you're one of the people out there with the PSVR 2, how are you feeling about it? Are there games you're playing on it? Outside of Resident Evil, I haven't found a lot of reasons to play it myself recently, so let me know. Speaking of the PSVR 2, more reports are showing that it is being massively outsold by the Quest on Amazon. Quest does include Quest 2 and Quest 3, which is an important thing to note, especially between the Black Friday sales on the Quest 2 and now the Quest 2's price dropping permanently to $249. But in a graph here, we can see from Road to VR, the PSVR 2 took about 3.2% of the holiday sales out of the VR market in comparison to the Quest 2 and 3, which took 96.8%. In some previous news videos, we've talked about how the Quest 2 itself is actually about double selling against the Quest 3, which makes sense now that it's half the price of that headset. Road to VR goes further here to talk about it does look like over the holidays, Quest actually had a great holiday season, selling somewhere around 320,000 headsets on Amazon just in the US. And PSVR 2 only selling a little over 10,000 during that time. PSVR 2 did have a strong launch when it first started out, but what does this mean for the current state of it? Where are the games has been my big question all along. Astrobot 2, I felt like should have been a launch title or should at least be coming soon. Farpoint was one of my favorite games that did depend heavily on the aim controller, and I doubt with these sales we're going to be seeing an aim controller on the PSVR 2. PSVR 2 is in a tough position. PSVR 1 sold well because it was the most approachable VR at the time. It was the cheapest VR by a long shot at the time, and so many people already own PS4s by then. There's still people who want PS5s who don't have them, and obviously if you don't have one, you're not going to spring for a PSVR 2 yet. A lot of our people on the channel here showed up up because of our PSVR tracking tips video back in the day. I know there's a lot of OG PSVR fans out there. Are you considering a PSVR 2 at all? Do you have a Quest 3? Does it seem like there's no reason to go get one? I'd love to know. Even with the lower sales figures for PSVR 2, at least they're giving us the list of their most downloaded PSVR 2 games so that we can see what is selling on the headset. Top games in the US, no big surprise, Pavlov and Beat Saber. Kayak VR still being up near the top, and we see across EU and Japan still Pavlov and Beat Saber both showing up in the EU. But in Japan, we don't see Pavlov show up as it's actually not available in that region to play Pavlov. There are plenty of people on Reddit telling you how to switch your account to a different region in case you really want to play Pavlov. But that's unfortunate as it's one of the top games, but probably due to its level of violence and gore, it doesn't make it to every region. I know my biggest game of the quarter, even of the year for PSVR 2 was definitely Resident Evil 4 in VR, although that won't necessarily always make a list like this because it's not specifically a VR game, but it is a VR mode. It was a big holiday season, at least for the Quest. I'm very excited about what we've got going on in there, and hopefully some more games getting announced here soon, because it does feel like we've had so many of the big ones come out and then a few disappointments recently with games like Bulletstorm launching. But what's out there on the horizon that you're excited for in VR? We're only a week away from Apple Vision Pro launching. I'm excited to see what other people have to say about that, the reviews. Fortunately, we're definitely not getting one anytime soon, but it'll be interesting to see what other people say and how they react to it, and especially how the public reacts to it. But let me know down below how you're feeling, what's going on in your VR world. I want to say thank you once again for coming out. We just hit 68K. One more to go. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in another reality.